Good morning. Today we're going to be talking about physical health as it relates to our Christian spiritual formations. I'm beginning with a quote from John Paul II. Through the fact that the Word of God became flesh, the body entered theology through the main door. You see, we are created in the image of God. We've talked about that several times during our time together. Jesus, part of the triune God, put on flesh and came to dwell among us. We therefore realize that these mortal bodies were part of the creation story and that we are made to reflect and to glorify God. Let me repeat that because this is the central message of this session. And I want us to make sure that we keep this in mind as we continue. Our mortal bodies are part of the creation story and are made to reflect and glorify God. Our informed physical health and wellness are an integral part of living out the purpose that God has for us in this earthly life. Diane Chandler, in her book, Christian Spiritual Formation, gives 5 essential areas concerning physical health and wellness. They are nutrition, physical exercise, sleep, stress, rest, and leisure, and sexual purity. Having the goal of glorifying God with our physical bodies as our foundation, we're going to look at some of these areas. My prayer is that it will bring us a new sense of focus and encouragement. If our goal is to please God, then we can see more clearly the real benefits in following His design for us. However, if our goal is to please someone else or even to please ourselves, then we can get easily sidetracked. So I want us to stay focused on that idea. The Apostle Paul focused in his writings on his belief that whatever happened to him physically would promote the glory of God. First, Philippians 1:20 reads, I eagerly expect and hope that I will in no way be ashamed, but will have sufficient courage so that now, as always, Christ will be exalted in my body, whether by life or death. Christian psychologist Elizabeth Lewis Hall states, glorifying God in our bodies involves decision-making about our bodies, engaging in relationships in God-glorifying ways, and practicing spiritual disciplines that involve us. With this in mind, let us begin. First up is nutrition. Diet, such a dreaded word. I've been on so many different ones, I can't count. Of course, we're all on a diet. We decide in any given day what we're going to eat. In our culture, we have so many options. Unlike most of the world, we can easily purchase a huge variety of foods. I find myself somewhat lazy in my choices. I ask questions such as, what's available? What's easy? What would I like? When the more important question is, what do I really need? And I know what I need. I've had plenty of education in this area. It's not because of a lack of information that I choose the foods that are less nutritious for me. This is a discipline I have to admit I struggle with a bit. I love food, it's as simple as that. But I do love all kinds of food, so that is a positive. But I particularly love sugar and salt, which can be problems at times for all of us. Now, I know that for many, food is a strong trigger, and I don't want to load on guilt during this discussion. We must keep in mind, even as we continue our discussion, that not only considering our responsibility, but also understanding, again, and reminding ourselves that we have a God who is kind, patient, loving, and forgiving in every area of our life. He always has our best interest in mind. And that's why we are focusing on these areas, to bring understanding to what He desires for us. So what to do? Let's start with the purpose of food. Simply put, food is fuel, but some food is better quality fuel. Again, if we go back to our beginning premise that our bodies are made to bring glory to God, then we can look at this area with clear eyes. In our day, lots of foods have been overprocessed. A good adage to follow when shopping is shop the perimeter of the store. There's where you'll find fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and dairy. It's a fact. If I eat healthy foods, I feel better. And if I feel better, I'm more likely to represent Christ in a positive manner. I may also find that I'm more patient and my attitude may improve. Can this really be true? Well, yes, indeed it can. A study done in 2016 showed that different types of food affect our moods. Diets with high glycemic load, that includes carbohydrates and sugars, trigger symptoms of depression and fatigue. And speaking of sugar, God has designed an incredible process for sugar. The pancreas secretes a hormone, insulin, to process this. But overtaxing our pancreas with large amounts of sugar can lead to insulin resistance, where the cells do not respond normally to this hormone. This, of course, can lead to diabetic conditions that require us to take insulin in a supplemental form. I'm not saying cut out sugar completely from your diet, but I am saying maybe be more mindful of how much sugar you're having every day. And now water. Water is extremely important in our daily diet and therefore deserves some mention here. I have to admit again that I'm not a good water drinker. There, I've said it. I'm admitting it to you. However, I know that it's good for me, and honestly, flavored waters have been my salvation. Here are some suggestions for diet that are small changes that could make a big difference in your life. Swap out your soft drinks for water or herbal tea, or begin by limiting even the number of soft drinks you have during a day. Eat no meat at least one day a week. Ensure fresh produce is in your diet daily. Consume whole fruits, not juice. There's no fiber in the juice, and that is very important for you. Avoid processed meats and cheeses. Now, I want to pause here for a moment. I know that before we get overwhelmed with these ideas of what we should and shouldn't do, disciplines are essentially habits. I want to focus on one small habit that you could develop, that you and I could develop to change some of our physical habits. For me, as I think about it, that would be drinking water. My goal is to only drink water after the noon meal. It's a beginning. It's a place to start. Start with a small habit. Before we leave this discussion of water, how much water do we actually need? According to Dr. Don Colbert, to determine how much water your body needs, take your body weight in pounds and divide by 2. That's how many ounces of water you need a day. Let's move on to exercise. There are so many benefits to regular exercise. In the past, exercise was part of our daily life when people walked to shops and worked on farms. I notice this when I visit European cities. Walking is often the preferred method of getting around. Now with automation, we have become much more sedentary, and so we need to introduce into our lives some type of daily exercise. With exercise, we not only lower our blood pressure, enhance blood circulation, decrease insulin resistance, maintain a healthy body weight, but also strengthen our immune system and aid in cognitive thinking. Wow. And that's just a few. One more, it helps minimize stress and depression. This happens because stress is minimized when cortisol is released, which is released when we exercise. Let me just point out, exercise alone is not sufficient for good health. Exercise and proper nutrition are the winning combination. Again, what is a small habit that you can begin to practice that will increase your amount of daily exercise? Maybe it's just a walk around the block to begin with. And find someone to walk with you. This will really help as you keep each other accountable. Next, I'd like to look at this area of sleep, which is so important. Sleep, rest, and reducing stress. Again, for me, stress as I've gotten older has become more of a problem, and that's so unfortunate. I've read so many articles and listened to podcasts on sleep and come away knowing just how important this is. In recent years, I've been fascinated by what happens as we sleep. Such things as tissue repair, release of hormones that regulate appetite, building of memory, and reduced of high cortisol levels that are from stress, just to name a few. Also very interesting is that as we sleep, our brain actually begins to sort out our life events. Did you know the old saying, sleep on it, actually has medical validity? This is reflected in the fact that we often find the solution to big problems after a good night of sleep. According to Steve Kalicman, who writes for the Harvard Medical Journal, the brain does a type of triage during sleep and looks at the events of the day to see what is left unfinished. Dr. Stickgold, a Harvard psychologist, goes on to say 2 elements make this happen. The part of the brain that produces and handles executive decision-making shuts down. Now the brain can process the things that are in the background. Also, neuromodulators, norepinephrine and serotonin, are turned off. Norepinephrine enhances focus on immediate, concrete problems. With this, the brain can now consider weaker elements that have been maybe overlooked and begins adding them to the main idea, thus helping in the final decision. Now, this may be way more information that you want, and it's way oversimplifying. I'm way oversimplifying the process. But I think you can see that this proves the point. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. There are, of course, steps that we can take in aiding for a good night's sleep. Here are some suggestions. Maintain a regular sleep schedule. That means going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time. We do this to our children, but we don't always apply it to ourselves, but it's such a healthy way to sleep. Evening and bedtime routine should include perhaps practicing some relaxation techniques, some deep breathing, some music, some way to kind of tone down from the day. Avoid strenuous exercise several hours before bed. Avoid caffeine. No screen time when going to bed. That was something we didn't have to include not that many years ago. And keep the bedroom dark and cool. In thinking for a moment about stress, I think we can agree that stress is present in all of our lives. But we have had a God who made us to have times to relax. We see this reflected from the beginning in our Creator God. He created for 6 days, and on the 7th day he rested. He rested not because he was tuckered out. He demonstrated to us that there's a time to pull back and to focus on what is good about life. There are, of course, good and bad stressors. Some stress is normal in life and prepares us for difficult or important situations. But in chronic stress, the body is affected adversely. Cortisol is a stress relief hormone. We discussed that under exercise, but too much stress on the adrenal glands, where that hormone is secreted, leads to adrenal fatigue and exhaustion. This leads to additional problems such as immune system suppression, high blood pressure, and even autoimmune disease. This may seem overwhelming for us, but let's just remind ourselves that Jesus told us he would help us with stress. He even cautioned us. He said, "Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry for itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." Matthew 6:34. Jesus is telling us not to be overly worried. In fact, he's saying he's got this, and he does. We have others in our group that can help us with the issues that we face. It's all part of being in the family of God. Shared burdens are easier to carry. I hope we can all take time, even if it's a brief time with a cup of coffee or tea, to relax and to think about all that we can be grateful for. Finally, we also honor God in our bodies as we live in sexual purity. Paul admonished the church at Corinth that for believers, their physical body belongs to Christ and must not be used to dishonor him in any way. The moral basis of sexuality is our belief that we are made in the image of God and that God wishes us to dwell in moral wholeness. This wholeness is not based on the world's view, but on the idea that God intends sex to occur in a monogamous, fully committed relationship, a relationship that is not hedging its bets and considering only what is good for me. Finally, I want us to remember our beginning premise. Every aspect of our physical body's health is to be used to reflect and glorify God. I hope you will consider what is presented in this session and how you can make a small beginning change in one area of your life that would enhance your health. Ask your group to help you as you begin. Now may God bless you as you continue to walk this path of transformation with Jesus.